The Salish Sea is one of the world's most amazing ecosystems, overflowing with life, and it's the best place on earth to be a wildlife veterinarian. Join me, Joe Gaydos, and Team SeaDoc as we explore the natural wonders of the Pacific Northwest in Salish Sea Wild. Here at the SeaDoc Society, we love all creatures, great and small. We gotta admit, though, that there's an extra special thrill in seeing some of the greatest. Today we're flying south from Orcas Island base, across the Strait of Juan de Fuca to the Olympic Peninsula. We're hoping to do some science on the largest animals that regularly visit the Salish Sea, humpback whales. For this expedition, SeaDoc's Bob Friel and I are joining a special team. Doug Sandilands of SR3 and Jen Tackaberry of Cascadia Research Collective will lead our group aboard SR3's research vessel, Nova. Not only do Doug and Jen have years of experience studying humpbacks, they're also the most experienced whale rescuers working in our region. The recovery of humpbacks since the end of commercial whaling is a momentous success story. However, climate change-related shifts in their food supplies have increasingly put humpbacks and other whale species into conflict with fishing gear, leading to a surge in the number of entanglements. Getting snared in our modern, super-strong plastic ropes can be devastating and often deadly events for whales. And it's not a rare occurrence. From studying scars carried by survivors, researchers estimate that more than 70% of all humpbacks get entangled at least once during their lifetimes. These lines can cause traumatic injuries, sawing through a whale's flesh. They can also bind the animal so they can't swim or open their mouths to feed. Even when the whales aren't killed by drowning, blood loss, or infection, the injuries and stress can affect their long-term health and reproduction. This terrible suffering is an animal welfare issue. Entanglement is 100% a human-made problem, so it's up to us to stop it. Studies show that off California, Oregon, and Washington, including the Salish Sea, about 200 whales get tangled in fishing gear every year. Unfortunately, less than 10% of these are reported. The only hope for many of these desperate animals is that a trained team from the Large Whale Entanglement Response Network gets the call and reaches them in time. Last year, our network colleagues John Kalambakidis and Kirsten Flynn of Cascadia made news when a helicopter from Seattle's Como TV hovered overhead and broadcast live as they responded to an entangled gray whale off Port Angeles. The whale was caught in a commercial Dungeness crab line with a trap still attached. Just a single 100-foot piece of rope can double the effort it takes for a whale to swim. So imagine how hard and how painful it is to drag line, buoys, and a crab pot that can weigh more than 100 pounds. Thankfully, everything went well. The whale stayed calm and the team successfully removed all the gear. The year before that rescue, Doug and Jen, along with members of the Macaw tribe and Washington Fish and Wildlife, launched a mission to help a humpback caught in a big mess of line. The whale was so exhausted from struggling for days that it had basically given up. It didn't even react to the approach of the boat. Sea conditions were perfect, giving the team an opportunity to study the entanglement using waterproof cameras. They determined that the rope ran through the whale's mouth and wrapped numerous times around its tail, painfully hog-tying it. Any entanglement that goes through a whale's mouth or makes one complete wrap around a body part is considered life-threatening. This humpback didn't have a chance. It would die without human intervention. Trained responders never get in the water with entangled whales, but when the conditions are right, they'll take peeks underwater using dive masks to better decide which lines to cut in which order. Disentangling a whale is a lot like disarming a bomb. With the animal in pain and potentially panicking, it could go off at any moment, and you do not want to be close to 40 tons of raging, thrashing whale. A few years back, one of the most experienced and highly skilled entanglement responders on the East Coast, Joe Hallett, was killed when a North Atlantic right whale whacked him with its massive tail. Joe's last cut saved that critically endangered whale, but his death was a sobering reminder of how this work can turn treacherous in an instant. It's also similar to disarming a bomb because you must be absolutely sure you're cutting the correct line or you risk doing more harm than good. One wrong move and you could make it impossible to further help the whale. Instead of saving it, you might doom it. So, for the safety of both people and whales, it's imperative that only trained responders working under federal permits ever closely approach a whale or any other marine mammal in distress. This humpback was lucky to have such an experienced team. Between them, Doug and Jen have worked on 120 disentanglement operations. This one was a complete success. The whale swam away free of line, and the team collected the gear to study. Along with saving whales, response teams provide vital scientific data on the causes of entanglements and possible ways to prevent them. The vessel we use for working on whales is a 15-foot inflatable combat raiding craft used by Navy SEALs. Doug made some custom modification to SR3's military surplus boat so it'll more easily slide off a whale's back, just in case. Bob and I volunteered for the Large Whale Entanglement Response Network 6 years ago after cases in our region skyrocketed. Since this survey cruise will take us to the same area where Doug and Jen found that hog-tied humpback, and it's the time of year when most entanglements happen, we'll spend our first day running drills to make sure we're up to speed in case we encounter a whale in trouble. With Nova playing the part of an entangled whale, we practice our approaches. The first step is to attach a control line to the ropes already caught on the whale. Once attached to the whale, you have to be prepared for it to react and run, taking you on a Nantucket sleigh ride. We then add buoys to the line to mark and to add drag to the whale, slowing it down so we can get close enough to cut it free. Disentanglement missions can stretch for days, so if it's close to dark or sea conditions get dangerous and we need to pause operations, we attach a special buoy with a satellite transmitter to make sure we can later relocate the whale. As big as these animals are, it's frustratingly easy to lose a whale in the open ocean. That's why the most important thing you can do if you see an entangled whale is to report its location and then stand by, keeping the whale in sight until trained help arrives. At the end of the show, we'll list the numbers to call and report a whale in distress. Bouncing around cold waters in a tiny rubber boat, using a razor-sharp knife on a 50-foot whale, isn't something you want to put on a life insurance application. But the network ensures that operations are as safe as possible by adhering to strict protocols and by having members train on specialized skills over and over and over again. After plenty of practice runs, our skills are honed nearly as sharp as our disentanglement tools. We are ready to cruise. This is Joe Gaydos with the SeaDoc Society, and I'm in Port Angeles this morning. It's before daybreak, and we're going out to do a whale survey, and it's gonna be wild. Sitting up in the custom whale observation cage while Nova powers over the swells is like riding a galloping seahorse. After a 70-mile run down the strait, we reach the area where the Salish Sea meets the open Pacific. The rich waters here feed phytoplankton, that in turn supports masses of krill and small forage fish, that in turn feed gigantic whales. It feels very fishy out here. That's brought out the seabirds, including these pelicans. It should also be attracting whales. And there she blows. Even from a distance, we can tell what kind of whales these are by the way they bend and arch their spines as they dive, creating the humped back that gives them their common name.
The guy has entanglement wounds.
It's time to get to work. We're going to scope each whale to see if any are entangled, and we're going to identify as many individuals as possible. To do that, we need a camera. Take pictures of the left and the right side of the dorsal fin, as
well as the fluke.
Humpbacks are one of the easiest of the great whales to identify. Each one has a unique fingerprint. It's just not on its finger. It's on the underside of the whale's flukes, also known as its tail, which can be up to 18 feet wide. Lucky for us, humpbacks almost always show their flukes when they do a deep dive. Almost always. Psych!
Yeah, literally.
That's better. Researchers will use our ID data to calculate abundance estimates and population trends. That crucial information tells us if our efforts to protect the whales are working. The flukes can also tell us details of a whale's life story. There are the freckles and birthmarks and rippled edges he's born with, and then there are the scars, scrapes, and even bites and tears that he collects over the years. When we run this set of flukes through Cascadia's database, it tells us they belong to a male humpback, catalog number CRC 13651. He's been observed returning to feed in these waters for more than 20 years. We also find out that he's part of what's known as the Mexican breeding population. Under the Endangered Species Act, animals of the same type can be split into distinct population segments and protected differently if they meet certain criteria. The humpbacks we encounter around Washington and British Columbia come from 3 distinct populations, each named for the area they use as winter mating and calving grounds. About 70% are whales that breed in Mexican waters and are listed as threatened. 20% migrate here from Hawaii, a population segment that's considered healthy. The rest are from a Central American group that's still listed as endangered. We ID this whale as CRC 13604. Those perpendicular scars are called rake marks. They tell the tale of a harrowing escape when this big boy was just a baby. It was a transient killer whale that grabbed hold of his fluke and left those tooth marks. It's very likely that this humpback's mama fought off a pod of attacking killer whales and saved his life. Some very interesting research examining rake marks shows that female humpbacks who are attacked as calves seem to remember and learn from those events. Subsequently, they become better at protecting their own calves from killer whales. 13604 also shows bad scarring on his peduncle. That's the part of his body just forward of the flukes. These scars are almost certainly from a past entanglement. This whale's had some rough times, but he looks healthy now. Like his entire species, which was nearly driven extinct by commercial whaling, he shows real resilience in overcoming challenges. Commercial whalers killed thousands of humpbacks from the 3 populations that visit our waters. In just the 10 years from 1961 to 71, Soviet whalers alone killed 6,793 humpbacks in the feeding grounds used by the Hawaiian and the Mexican whales. It took a long time for whales to come back and test the waters. Just 20 years ago, it was still rare to see a humpback, while recently, we've recorded more than 500 sightings each summer inside the Salish Sea, and they've become a highlight of nature cruises. It's hard to imagine killing one of these awesome animals for today's equivalent of a measly $3,700. Whale watch boats make that much in a single outing. Large numbers of juvenile sablefish are schooling where 2 surface currents converge. To a humpback, that means brunch. Humpbacks are highly creative eaters. They even coordinate feeding with their fishing buddies. They often make nets to corral prey by blowing rings of bubbles, and also use the world's longest pectoral fins to scare fish towards their open mouths. It's hard to see exactly what's going on here, but it looks like they may be using their tails and those flexible flippers to herd or disorient the small fish. Their final move, though, is definitely the Rorqual Big Gulp. Humpbacks and their cousins like the blue and fin whales have pleats that run from their chin to their belly buttons. Because these enormous animals subsist on very tiny prey, they have to eat loads and loads of it. These pleats help make that possible. A rorqual's primary feeding strategy is to lunge towards schools of fish or krill, and then throw open their huge mouths. This causes the throat pleats to expand and engulf such immense volumes of water that the whale looks like a Thanksgiving Day parade float. Along with tons of water come scads of food. The whale then strains the seawater back out through its baleen filters, which keep the prey inside to be swallowed. Humpbacks and the other largest species of whales are called the great whales because of their tremendous size. An adult humpback that grows 50 to 60 feet long and weighs 40 tons chugs about 3,000 pounds of food a day while they're in their summer feeding grounds. They need to pack on plenty of blubber to survive their winter snowbird migration to the tropics. One population that breeds off Costa Rica makes a 10,000-mile round trip to Antarctica each year to feed, which is believed to be the longest migration of any mammal. The warm water is a safer place to give birth and nurse calves because there are far fewer killer whales around, but it doesn't hold much in the way of concentrated whale food. Humpbacks primarily live off whatever they can eat during the summer, so these whales are working hard gobbling fish. This is a lot of exercise for the big humpbacks, and it can get hot wrapped in all that blubber. To keep from overheating, the whales push blood to outer layers of skin where it's cooled by seawater. That's what's giving them the pink tinge on their throats. We're working hard too, gathering as many ideas as possible in our short time at sea. Jen spots a whale that looks like a good candidate for collecting health data. Using a crossbow and a special dart, she'll take a small skin and blubber sample. Researchers will get a wealth of information from what amounts to just a mosquito bite for the whale. Genetics, diet, stress level, exposure to persistent pollutants, even a pregnancy test, all from a sample the size of a pencil eraser. Modern science is so cool. We've gathered lots of data, and it's time for us to head back to port. Doug will plot a course that keeps us out of the shipping lanes. Whales don't have that luxury. They go wherever they need to find food and to migrate. This sometimes puts them on a collision course with ships, and that never ends well for the whale. Aside from the commercial whaling still conducted by Japan, Norway, and Iceland, ship strikes and entanglements are the two main sources of unnatural suffering and mortality for whales all around the world. We know how to reduce ship strikes. Shipping lanes should move further offshore. Ships must slow down when near known whale aggregations, and we need to carefully study the effects on wildlife before approving port expansions and the resulting increase in ship traffic. As for entanglements, we didn't spot any today, but the odds are that somewhere on the West Coast, there's a whale in trouble. The vast distances and logistics show how difficult it is to find and help entangled whales. And one thing everyone in the response network knows for sure is that giving volunteers sharp knives and sending them to sea in tiny rubber boats is not the solution. That'll come only by preventing whales and fishing gear from getting mixed up in the first place. We can do that by changing fishing practices or redesigning the gear, and by supporting commercial fishers while they adapt. We ended the wholesale slaughter of the great whales when ordinary people joined with conservation groups to pressure governments and industry to do the right thing. We need to show that same spirit today to ensure that there's a happy ending to every whale's tale. If you see an entangled whale, call 1-877-SOS-WHALE or contact the U.S. Coast Guard on VHF Channel 16.
Push me out to sea, baby. It's the best thing for us both. I'll be happy out there, baby. Fish below and stars above. Push me out to sea, baby. There's nothing left for you to do.
This is Joe Gaydos of the SeaDoc Society. Thanks for watching. Click over here to check out more episodes of Salish Sea Wild. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can join Team SeaDoc on all our adventures. Thank you.